My guest today was a longtime municipal politician in Waterloo Region. He was first elected to the City of Kitchener in 1988. Prior to that, he had a number of years of civic involvement on various committees. He was a councillor for the City of Kitchener, and for many of those years also sat on regional council during the double elect era. Later, he would join the regional council when regional councillors were either mayors or directly elected through the cities. He finally retired in 2022. That is a 34-year span of successfully getting elected and re-elected by the voters of Kitchener. I'm pleased to welcome Geoff Lorentz to the Old Grey Mayors podcast. Geoff, buddy, that's quite the, who's had a streak like that, eh?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never really looked back to see, but I think maybe Dom Cardillo was in there for a while.
Dom and maybe Carl Kiefer.
Or Carl Kiefer, that's right.
Carl had a long one going in Cambridge. He had a good gig going in Cambridge too.
Yeah.
Although he was an insurance salesman, you were the letter carrier.
That's right. Two different lines of work, that's for sure.
Yeah, but you always delivered.
Always delivered. You got that.
Yeah, you started life out, you were a letter carrier. When did you start as a letter carrier?
That's a good question. I started back, I think in 72.
72. Okay. So, and then, going through all of that, what led to your interest or involvement in, municipal matters? This was before the election, right? Before your 1988 election.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I got involved with the with our union, the Letter Carriers Union, and I kind of worked my way up to as secretary at that of the local.
Right.
And then we joined the Labor Council, and I was a delegate to go to the Labor Council, and I got involved with the Municipal Affairs Committee at the Labor Council. In fact, I ended up chairing that.
Ah.
And so there was kind of like this long-standing way that they looked at it is if you're chair of a committee, you should probably run for council. So we had ran a couple of candidates and were successful. Will Ferguson, you may remember, and
and Wayne Samuelson.
Wayne Samuelson, yeah,
and John Smola, right?
And John Smola, and before him, Bob Hopf. Bob was on council. And he passed away, and John took his place.
Oh, okay.
Remember that? Yeah.
So it's interesting how Labor got involved with municipal politics, and not really. Do you know why there was that strong connection that way?
Not really. I think it was kind of the mantra for Labor councils to be more involved in their communities, and there's no better way of doing that than to be an elected official.
Yeah. Now, before you ran, though, you were on a committee. It was the Auditorium Operating Committee, wasn't it?
Correct. Yeah. I was on the Auditorium Operating Committee for a number of years, and that was kind of I was involved with the building of the new the twin pads.
Okay.
The Auditorium Operating Committee.
Behind the auditorium.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Behind the Dom Cardillo Arena.
And behind the Dom Cardillo Arena. Correct.
So that Auditorium Operating Committee, would that be, I kind of got the impression, I was chatting with that those committees, was that a part of the City of Kitchener, or was that when it was independent of the City of Kitchener?
No, that was part of the City of Kitchener. It was just kind of a commitment that I think the city had made to the Labor Council to give them a token spot on something.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's kind of the way that worked.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, you need trades guys to do all the work and stuff, right? So.
Yeah, and back in that day, there was a strong labor presence with Butt Automotive and BF Goodrich and Uniroyal and all of those big plants. So
my parents were union members working at the factories, local Epton, BF Goodrich before it became Epton, and Lear Seating, right? General Springs, it used to be called.
General Springs, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad was as well. So he worked at Blower and Forge, Canada Pump.
So, being on the that Auditorium Operating Committee would have brought you in touch with directly with a lot of the local politicians too, probably.
Definitely, for sure. And it was a big deal. I mean, they were usually 3-4 hour meetings. We'd have lunch over the course of lunch, and
Right, right.
there was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, there was COE, there was all kinds of different trade shows coming in, the Globetrotters, all of that stuff it was a real happening place. That was way before Skydome
And so that was all through you guys then. Yeah, okay. Because I think there's a plaque down there near the ticket booth area at the auditorium, and it's got a bunch of names on there from something. And I was looking at the date, and I think maybe Sean Strickland might have been on that thing too.
Could have been.
Yeah, and wow, this thing really goes far back.
Yeah.
So how did you then decide to take a run at council?
Well, I think we talked about where we should be looking at getting involved, and I talked over with the committee, and I said I think that I should probably run for the school board. It's a good way to introduce yourself to the community, and so anyway, I filled out my papers for the school board, and when I went up to City Hall, I popped into the mayor and members of council area. And I was talking to a few people, and Dom came out, Dom Cardillo, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm filing my papers for school board. And he said, get in my office. Come on, get in here. So he sat me down and he said, you're not going to do that. He said, you don't want to go for the school board. He said, Don Travers has announced that he's not going to run again, and you should be running in his ward. You live out there? So I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I mean, it's a big step when you first decide whether you want to do it or not.
Yeah.
I go home and talk it over with my family, and I did that. I ended up filing my papers, and I never looked back after that.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, we've had Don on the podcast too to chat about his time and some of the stuff that he was working on. So it's interesting. So that's interesting that that's who you replaced on there. So what was the campaign like?
Well, I ran against, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 other people, but I kind of just ran my own thing. I didn't have, it's funny, through the whole course of the 34 years, I never really had a campaign manager. I never really had anybody that kind of, I jobbed out any of the specific jobs to. I always was a hands-on. So, I was happy to, I raised a little bit of money. I think we got some money from the Labor Council. I put some of my own money in. My parents gave me some money. And my dad helped out with knocking on doors.
Right.
He did the old Forest Hill area, and I did all of Forest Heights. And, go out and knock on doors and just talk to people. And I was fortunate because by then I had probably delivered mail to almost everybody.
Oh, that was your route area too.
Well, for sure. I mean, you just kind of move around, and so I knew a lot of people from that, and that really helped.
Did you do a lot of literature drops?
Well, no, you had to be careful about that. But the funny thing was, Rob, that super mailboxes were first coming in. The super mailboxes. So at that time, I was president of the Letter Carriers Union, so I ended up doing some radio stuff and some TV stuff about the dangers of these mailboxes, and some of the people. There was a guy by the name of John Raffolo who was really upset about having to go walk down the street to pick up his mail. So he was like the poster boy for the residents, and it worked out really well for me. I got a lot of exposure, a
lot of press out of that. Okay,
you know what it's like when you're on council. You look for those opportunities, and you kind of, if they present themselves, you go for it.
There's certainly lots of opportunities, right? And certainly, like
back
you said,
then it wasn't, because there wasn't a lot of media per se, right?
You're right. Yes, 88.
Yeah, for sure.
But you know what? You had more
in the walkie-talkie phones. Right?
But you probably had not better, but more local coverage going on, right? I mean, a larger presence. Now, we have good people now, but I always get the impression there were more people covering. Your local section was a lot bigger than it is today.
Yeah, I would agree.
you know, and then you had guys like our buddy Brian Storts with his paper for a year and a half.
Yeah, yeah. Good old Brian.
But so you get elected in '88, and actually, there's some interesting people you're on council with at that time, eh? Like Gary Ledston and
Yeah, Will
Mike
Ferguson.
Yeah, Will Ferguson, Mike
James
Hiscott.
Singleton, Mike Hiscott. Yeah, Chris Wiley.
Yeah,
Mark Johnson.
Chris Wiley was the only female on the council at the
that's
time.
right. Yeah,
And Dom was the mayor.
Dom was the mayor. Jim Ziegler.
Yeah, Jim Ziegler too.
Yeah.
So what were some of the, do you recall what some of the issues were back in that days that you were dealing with?
Well, I think the biggest one was building the new city hall.
So you were in the middle of the decision's already been made to where to go, right?
That's right. We were deciding on how much we were going to spend and what the design was going to be, and
that brick from India, the red brick.
Red brick, yeah. Did I tell you that story?
But it was flaking or something. I can't remember now.
No, it wasn't. It was how they were harvesting it.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, so so like some labor issues.
Well, they had at one point they showed us, because we would meet every Monday morning at 7:00 to go through all of this stuff. I mean, we basically spent every week talking about City Hall and where, you know, brick by brick design, design, whatever, right? But they showed us this one video that they had taken because it was coming from India, and they showed these guys harvesting the stone, and nobody had proper footwear, nobody had helmets on, nobody had any safety gear at all. It's like, my God, you're not showing this at a council meeting. People will go right through the roof.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that, because I was going to say to you, one of the nice things about that was that you guys were able to pay that off in short order, right? The City Hall. Yeah. And I was just did a chat with John Gazzola about that. And, you know, he was the finance commissioner or treasurer, what have you at the time. But now that you mention it, he tells a story. He used to work in the quarries in Beachville when he was a younger guy. And when he was in university, he didn't have any safety footwear, and some 600 pounds of something fell on his toes and broke his toes.
You're kidding.
That's funny you just mentioned this story, because it just made me think of John telling his story earlier. But everything went fairly smooth, I would say, with the construction.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The only thing I'm wondering about is the temperature gauge at the top of the, or whatever that thing was.
We got told to build the goods there. It was supposed to be a thermometer, but it never worked at all. Yeah. And
then the other thing was, I remember the councillors that were rookie councillors never got a window seat to the public area.
Yeah, that's right. I ended up in the best office when I was finished, but at the beginning I was in probably the worst.
Oh, there you go.
But that's okay. It's like there's no bad spot up there.
Yeah, for sure. So aside from the City Hall, what else were some of the things that you were dealing with?
Well, I think that basically took up most of our time. You know, we were all through that whole process, we're contemplating how we're going to re-energize and redevelop the downtown. And,
right.
You know, it was a really tough go. At one point, I know that we were kicking around the idea of renting a crane and just putting it out there so people would think something was happening downtown. But, I can tell you. Well, you remember what it was like down there. I mean,
somewhat. Yeah, for sure.
Bars and you know, it was really.
I was at St. Jerome's in the late 70s, right? 76 to 80 sort of thing, right? And there wasn't a whole lot happening down there, you know, pinball and whatever else, shops and stuff like that. But, you know, and even you guys adding the city trying out the Market Square and the King Center and all that stuff. It's just, you had to try something.
Yeah. And we had a lot of different options. One was a casino for the King Center.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's just nothing really struck us as what we needed to have down there.
Right. Yeah. Because I remember there was some talk about entertainment as a way to, to make something happen, because you can have people there from 9 to 4 or 9 to 5, but then in the evening it's dead.
Right.
And what do you do to attract people down there? So thinking about that, we're going to talk about some other stuff like Ralgren and your community services work, but just on this, what do you think turned it around a bit, if one could say it's turned around? I mean, I think it's turned around in the downtown, but what would you say was sort of the turning? Can you picture it or pinpoint a turning point on that?
Well, I think investing $110 million in the downtown certainly was a turning point, I think. But
yeah, making that decision, eh?
Yeah, and we started to build more rapport with some of the landowners. Tony DiBattista was a big landowner down there, and
yeah,
we were butting heads all the time. And the first time I had a dealing with him is they were putting posters all over in front of Forest Heights Collegiate about coming down to some kind of a thing that he had going on, and they were. It was for young kids, but it was also, for older kids to be able to drink and everything else. And I kind of raised it at council, and I said, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't be allowing these guys to put up all of these posters for these kinds of events. And so we kind of locked horns. And then finally, at some point, we said, maybe we should talk to this guy. So we ended up, members of council got together with him and his team, and we sat down and talked for a couple of hours about his land holdings and what he thought his vision was. And we talked about, the things that we would like to see done. And after that, we had a really good rapport with him. He made off, we bought some stuff from him, and he made off like a bandit, but you can't blame him. He was a small businessman, and
well, he was investing in an area where a lot of people were running away from, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, and that was the thing, right?
Yeah. What were some of the things that you guys? So starting to talk to the landowners, the fund. Now that fund attracted. It was the universities, right? I mean, was it the Laurier for the School of Social Work and the School of Pharmacy?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a kind of catalyst that people started to look at our downtown in a different way. And then we started with the Communitech building. We bought that and started bringing high tech into the downtown, and really made a big difference. And then I think people really started to sit up and say, hey, we got something going here. But, the idea of investing $110 million when you represent the suburbs into the downtown was a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, for sure.
And that was like 110 million was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
So,
and that's something that happens, right? I mean, you get a bit of that downtown versus the suburbs kind of view sometimes, because I've heard it mentioned by other people where your constituents in your ward are saying, okay, well, that's great. You're doing all that there. What are we getting out here?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing. Exactly. To be able to combat that, I think we've kind of worked out, not so much, I get more of a strategy on how we're going to start investing in the suburban areas as well. And we started building community centers. And I chaired the Community Services Committee for 20 years. And we got a lot of community centers built over that course in time. We were able to do in Forest Heights. We did Forest Heights Community Center. It was a fire hall and ambulance substation as well, and behind Highland Hills Mall.
So sort of like a joint sort of project, right?
Yeah, and it really worked out well.
Yeah, because everyone's contributing to the costs to get it up and going.
Yeah, exactly. So that one went over great. We built Doom, Stanley Park. We did. Country Hills.
Yeah, so that's one way to sort of spread the love, so to speak, around the community.
We were using our gas money so we had a gas utility, and the city of Kitchener still does. So it's a excellent source of revenue, and it gives back to the community. Building libraries as well, Rob, and pools.
Yeah, I'm gathering that's been a real positive holding on to that thing rather than going after the big buck, but working the long haul on it.
Yeah. And another good thing that's happened recently is that both hydro utilities have merged together. I've been after that for years and years. It just doesn't make any sense to have duplicate services in Kitchener and Waterloo.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really good thing. But but one thing I guess I'm worried about is now with the Premier talking about the idea of amalgamation, how that will affect the gas utility. I think
interesting.
Is a dividend going to come back to all the residents of Kitchener? I mean, there's
all the residents of the region.
Well, how do you equalize that?
Yeah, right. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, look at there's a lot of complications happen. It's like in Peel where they're saying, well, Mississauga, you'll go on your own. Brampton, you'll go on your own, and then Brampton saying, well, hold on a sec, all that infrastructure in Mississauga we paid for. We got a bill.
Yeah.
And then Milton is saying, wait a minute, you two have all started to grow. We're ready next in line, and now you're bailing.
Yeah, I know. So
so there's lots of complications there. So who knows if that's going to happen? But just since you mentioned amalgamation, do you got a viewpoint on amalgamation?
I've always supported amalgamation. It never made any sense to me to have all these different municipalities. And it's funny, when we were pushing for amalgamation, and there was a few of us on council that really wanted to see it happen.
Right.
We got a lot of pushback from the townships. And, the biggest thing was that the cities just want to come in and build steal the land and build out and all of this stuff. Guess who's doing all the building in the townships now? We can't trust you city slickers.
But
I know.
But that was in the late 90s, right? I mean, when there was a lot of discussion going on about amalgamation, and John Sweeney was doing his report and stuff.
Yeah.
There was actually some votes that were maybe going to go through that might have changed the way things got done, but didn't happen.
We even tried to vote to put it on the ballot about whether we wanted to amalgamate with Kitchener or Waterloo. And Kitchener said yes, and Waterloo said no.
Yeah, that was the 2010 ballot where. So, what did you think of the idea of putting it on the ballot like a referendum? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think people have a right to have a say in it. It's one thing to be able to represent, say, 18,000 or 20,000 people. But at the same token, you don't know how people feel about a lot of these big issues. And I think referendums are a good way to go. You certainly get it's not the answer to everything, but you get a good flavor of what the community you represent is, what they're saying and how they're feeling about it.
Did it surprise you that Waterloo said no to a conversation and Kitchener said yes to the conversation?
It didn't surprise me, but it did surprise me as well.
Or maybe disappointed you.
Yeah, I think it was more disappointment because I think the writing's on the wall. I mean, everybody's looking at downsizing. Everybody's looking at trying to, control costs. And I think it's just a matter of time before it happens.
So let's talk about while you were a councillor, and so you said the community services, building the centers, and all of that. Was there any other committees you were on through the city of Kitchener during your time?
Yeah, I was on the Huron Natural Park committee with.
Okay, so that's creating the Huron Natural Park.
Yeah, with
Tom Galloway.
Tom chaired that committee. That's right. And Frank Blue was involved from the school board.
Okay.
And Tom Clancy was involved. He was the head of Parks and Rec for.
Yes. Yeah. I know his son, Kevin, who's lives. So Tom Clancy. Yeah. Tom Clancy, longtime rec guy, right? In the city of Kitchener.
Salt of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally and that's a nice thing to set up. Was that a difficult thing to get together, the Huron Natural Park?
It was. We had to bend a few arms for developers to be able to get a hold of the land, but we were able to work it through, with concessions here and development agreements in other different areas. So it worked out great.
So that's interesting. So
you go out there. Tom's name's not on a plaque, and mine isn't either. But Tom Clancy and Frank Blue are, and they're the guys that were getting paid the big bucks to do it.
We'll go sneak out there and scratch you on there. So that's interesting. So in order to create that, you would have had to go out to talk to, because parts of it were with different owners, and you had to go to those owners / developers to get them to contribute parts of it for anything they wanted to develop.
Right. Yep. It wasn't that easy, but it came together really well.
Yeah.
And the product that we have today is just totally amazing.
Yeah, so that's a nice contribution as well. Well,
Yeah.
you would have saw a lot of growth up in Forest Heights too over the years.
Well, not really, because Trustler is the boundary.
Oh, was it already developed up to?
Yeah, it was already developed up to there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did a little bit of there was some Kitchener Housing did some units up there, but that was basically it. On the other side of just
So it was built up by the time you ran in '88.
yeah.
So in '88.
Well, no, it wasn't. It was building up when I was on council.
Oh, okay, building up. Okay,
Yeah.
and approved. Now, when you got to council there, this was a time when members who were elected to city council, some of the members would get elected to regional council.
Appointed.
Appointed, sorry, but
Appointed by
from among the elected
That's
officials.
right. Yeah,
So sort of
exactly.
like a double election, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like you're elected
Yeah.
to council, and then from amongst the small group, elected to regional council.
Yeah, it was based kind of mainly on seniority.
Yeah.
Right? So if you were the low guy, you weren't going there, right?
So you wouldn't have gotten on in '88, and was it 2-year terms back then?
Yeah, I think it was 2-year terms.
So then in
2-year
1990,
terms.
what's that?
It was 2-2-year terms, and then it went to a 3-year term, I think.
Oh, okay, that's a lot of elections.
Yeah, that's a lot of elections. I think at one time it was 1 year.
Yeah, prior to way
Didn't
back.
get anything done in one year.
Yeah, sometimes when you read the history of some of the really old mayors, you see they were there for 1 year.
Yeah, you think, how could you do anything in 1 year?
Yeah, no, right. I mean, you're just learning the job too, right?
Yeah, and you're running again for the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you first get appointed to regional council?
That was in 91.
Yeah, tell us the story about how that opened up and how there were actually sort of two different methods used.
Well, Brian Stortz and I both got elected at the same time.
Yeah.
There was one of us was going to go to regional council.
But how did the opening happen?
Will Ferguson got elected to provincial parliament.
Yeah, with the NDP, when the NDP formed the government.
That's right. Yeah, when the Clintons came to town.
Wild times. And so how did you and Stortz deal with this?
Well, Brian and I had a deal that we were going to flip a coin and the winner was going to go and the other one. And I was good with that. So we ended up flipping the coin and I lost.
And then what happened?
Well, I went in and talked to Dom and told him, I said, Brian and I have kind of decided that by flipping a coin that he's going to go to regional council and that I'm not. He said, it doesn't work that way. I said, what do you mean? He said, council makes that decision. You guys don't have any right to do that. Council will decide who's going to go to represent them at the region.
Right, you two young bucks.
Yeah, and I ended up going. So
the council has selected you.
Yeah.
So how did you find it at the region then?
Different, that's for sure. We were still working out of the courthouse, 22 Weber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the influence of the region like at the time compared to the city? The relationship, or is one larger than the other? One, that sort of thing. I
think until the region moved into regional headquarters, it really didn't hit its stride.
Right.
But I remember lots of water debates with Andrew Tlegg. Do you remember Andrew Tlegg?
Yeah, I know Andrew. Yeah. God rest his soul.
Man, he would go on and on and on, and he was so passionate about all that stuff.
Because he was on Waterloo Council at the time, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of groundwater stuff that you guys were talking about.
Stuff. Yeah.
Because that's our source. Okay.
Yeah.
But you were I know you're on a licensing committee. Was that with the region or without the city of Kitchener?
That was with the region. Yeah. But when I first got on to regional council, we were looking at building. In fact, we were managing those projects, the new regional headquarters,
Right.
Regina. Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And what else was there? I think wasn't there 3?
You're looking at buildings?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. So the three were City Hall. We
Yeah.
were still working on City Hall. We were also building regional headquarters in 99 Regina. Basically
Wow.
all at the same time, right?
Yeah. So that's a lot.
So that was a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
A lot of
And at
construction
the
going on.
region, it wasn't as much hands-on as it was at the city of Kitchener, right? I mean, we used to have some real big debates about what we wanted to do with that building, but like I said before, all of this stuff, when you represent the suburbs, it becomes a real conundrum. You have to give it a lot of thought and try to foresee how the future will look when you're building things in the downtown core and it's not affecting everybody that you represent, right?
What was the on City of Kitchener Council? What was your relationship like generally with the other councillors?
We all got along. Basically,
I think you mentioned about going out for drinks and stuff after, right?
Yeah, I think that was a kind of a tradition that we always tried to do. Was just because you don't agree in the council chamber doesn't necessarily mean you have to walk out the door and just say, screw you, or I don't like you, or
Right.
I got along with all of my colleagues all the time. We could have differences of opinion, and at the end of the day, we could shake hands. If we never really shook hands, but we just kind of agreed that we have differences of opinion, but we still liked each other.
And you get together after the council meetings?
Yeah, we'd try to go hit some of the bars downtown afterwards.
Support them.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's a good way to break the ice and chat about things too, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And nothing like it didn't happen every council meeting, but especially when we had big votes or we were making some big decisions. And it was just really nice to be able to talk more in a relaxed environment than sitting around the horseshoe all the time. Now there's rules against that.
Well, it depends how many people get together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you have 8 people out of 10 show up, you can't do that.
Yeah, no, you can't unless the clerk shows up and takes notes.
Yeah,
It takes minutes.
And staff aren't going to do that. They're heading out the door as soon as they can.
Well, maybe you bought him a beer.
Probably not even that. But
So, do you recall some of the things? Like I'm thinking about the smoking bylaw, for example, is one of the things that you had to deal with at the regional level.
yeah, I was chairing the licensing committee then, and that was one of the big issues, probably the biggest issue that we dealt with as far as licensing went. I mean, we always had these cab wars where one company was complaining about the other company and they didn't want to raise the rates and the other one did. And so I really got to know a lot of the cab industry from that. But the biggest one was the smoking bylaw. And, we had some long, very long meetings. A lot of restaurant owners coming in, very upset, ticked off.
Yeah. Do you remember how that all started with respect to bringing in? Because there was no smoking bylaw anywhere in the province.
Yeah.
And so Kitchener or Waterloo Region was an innovator on that. Do you recall how that all got started?
Well, I think there was discussions about at the provincial level about doing something about that, and that they've gone on for a couple of years, and nobody wanted to do anything about it. So our chief medical officer of health decided that it's something that I think affects a lot of people in the region, and they brought forward the recommendation to committee and then to council, and we all supported it. We thought it was the right thing to do. If you're a non-smoker going into a restaurant where people smoke, it's the worst thing ever. I remember.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of people not too many people would disagree with that. So
Yeah.
What was the process then? You would have had a bylaw put together and you probably had some public input.
Yeah, sure we did.
What were those sessions like?
They were the worst. I think the general public didn't come out because they just kind of figured that we were going to do it anyway. But anybody that was in the beverage industry, really, they were quite upset about it because they thought they were going to lose customers. But if everybody does it, how do you lose customers?
Right. Where are they going to go?
Right? Where are they going to go? That's right. So we ended up softening it up a little bit. We talked about smoking areas outside or whatever. And we kind of staged that over a number of years. And it was tough. I remember going into a restaurant after we did that and the owner tearing the strip off me, basically saying, what right do I have? And this was the issue. What right do we have to tell these people how to run their business?
Right.
My answer to him simply was, what right do you have to poison your customers and your staff?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You got to look at it from all areas. During the debate itself, did you have some run-ins in the community as well during the debate?
No, not so much. I stayed out of the restaurants then. That's a smart move, right?
Yeah. I guess that's one of the things about local politics is I know Ken Sealing one time said when I was mayor, he says, your circle of friends will start to get a little smaller because you start to make decisions that are going to piss off somebody, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to watch where you go when you're going to the grocery store or bumping into somebody that knows you and has an opinion about something they want to share.
That's why you wear sunglasses and a hat.
Incognito.
Incognito, as best as you can be.
Yeah. But the smoking bylaw, so it's one thing to pass the bylaw, it's another thing to enforce it, though.
Yeah. Well, we hired a retired detective. I forget his name, but he did a really great job for us. He was Scottish. I think he had a Scottish accent, and he didn't take crap off of anybody. And he had a group of people that worked for him, and it basically was complaint generated. They get complaints, they go there and deal with the issue. You know, our big problems were stuff like Oktoberfest. You know, and some of the other bigger events. I mean, you used to go to the Ranger games and people would be smoking everywhere, right? So you got to kind of create an area where they can go, and then the next year you make it a little smaller, and the next time it's outside, and the next time it's not anywhere near the building. And I think if you do it in increments like that, like that's kind of what we did.
Ease out of it.
It worked a lot better that way.
Better than the cold. It's like trying to quit smoking. Cold turkey might not be the way to go, right?
Well, exactly.
So you're like applying the patch process here.
Trying to anyway, layering it in.
Yeah. Getting out of it. One of the things that you dealt with, talking about toxic issues, would be the Ralgren Crescent. That was in your ward?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was right on the boundary. Kylan Road was the boundary.
And what was the issue there?
Well, I think the residents there were getting methane gas into their units, into their homes. And the issue they thought was that the city had allowed those houses to be built on a dump. And it wasn't the case at all. I mean, long story short, it was basically peat and marl was underneath, and it everywhere you go in the city, and you'll know this as being mayor, when you start in the core or whatever, if those houses were built 100 years ago, different standards completely than what they're building brand new houses now.
Right.
And so these homes were built. In fact, they were built to a standard, and then they also had a system installed in them, an old-fashioned one, to vent out the methane. And over the years, people didn't even know what the tubes were for anymore. They cut them.
Right, you lose track.
Yeah, they got rid of them because they don't even know what it is. Why is this thing sticking up? And that's what it was. So we ended up excavating about 40 feet down to remove all the marl and peat.
So, yeah, okay. So when these homes were built, it was a known issue because they had devices put in.
Right, because it was built in a swampy area, right? I used to be Weaver's Farm at one point.
Okay, it's like an air-to-air exchanger. Who knows what that is?
Yeah, whatever that is, exactly.
Right, and then that got resolved. Now, Brenda Holleran came out of all of that, right?
Yeah, she
was an advocate during that time.
One of the two advocates. That's right.
Yeah. So you would have dealt with her during that time?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Every day.
That's good. That's good advocacy.
I'd walk out. I'd drive home after our meetings at 9 o'clock, and I'd feel really good about it until I read the paper the next day. and then you go back and try a different avenue and how we're going to do it. But
well, that's the thing, about politics is all your dirty laundry is exposed to everyone to see, right?
yeah, well, it's funny because people like Don Cameron lived on that street.
Oh, he did, eh? Oh, I didn't know that.
And a couple of other people that were kind of well known in the community, and they didn't want to make a big issue out of it. But I think everybody was concerned, and I was concerned as well because I didn't know the history of it, you know. And but it turned out with peat and marl that when it rains and it gets soaked, it starts to rot, right? But it also it's like a big sponge. It grows, and then when it dries out, it shrinks again, right?
Okay.
So some of the properties are moving up and down. So we ended up, I think, taking about 6 or 8 semi-detached out of there.
Oh, so the city they bought them or something, or
yeah.
Okay, that was the solution, and then clean up underground.
Yeah, I think I went down one time, and it was like 40 feet. The trucks were down there, and they built around.
Yeah, so it was. Was it near the dump? Is that why they thought it was the dump, or?
No, it was built in a swampy area. It was a farmer's field. I went to school with Phil Weber, who his dad owned that farm. It's right near the corner of Highland and Westmount.
I was going to say, I knew you were old, but I wasn't sure how old.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, the other thing that Brian and I did back in the day was we both sat on Kitchener Housing.
Okay, yeah.
We did some major projects there. The biggest one was, and the first one was Victoria School. We converted Victoria School into housing units.
I remember that project. I always thought that was a great project, converting that school right by the park.
Yeah, exactly. And so we did probably maybe 20 different developments by the time we were there. I don't think Kitchener Housing's built anything since, but we were just cranking them out. It was unbelievable.
So Kitchener Housing, what was the goal of Kitchener Housing, and who were you serving through Kitchener Housing?
People that needed housing. Hello.
Like anyone and everyone, or was there an income
issue?
No,
I think there was definitely a formula for how.
No, that's what I meant, right?
So much for today, same as today, right? But we had no problems in filling the units, and we built seniors units. It was a really exciting time because I didn't know anything about that industry, and it was really interesting to sit through. We would meet a lot.
So Kitchener Housing that was City of Kitchener, obviously, and the funding was coming from where? Was it upper tier?
Yeah, provincial and federal.
Okay, but because you had this corporation, you could focus on targeting this. Building certain types of houses for certain economic classes, and then providing them with this opportunity for low cost rental.
Right, rental.
Yeah,
rental accommodations. Yeah.
And did you guys start that, or you picked that up, or was that already going when you got there?
I think it was going before I got there, but it really hadn't started building anything yet.
Right.
It's a matter of being formed, and it was run by Sybil Fournette. It was just a dynamic.
Yes.
Job. There was no challenge she couldn't conquer. And how many projects did you do? Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
15, 17, something like that.
Right.
It was just amazing.
It's too bad it stopped.
Well, exactly. So I think what happened is, I think Kitchener Housing still exists, and members of council that sit on there still maintain and look after the projects that are there, but there's no new projects being built.
Well, that's the big issue. Like the region has housing too, and it's the big issue is what state of repair is everything in?
Yeah,
and that gets to be a pretty big issue.
I know that we've looked at some of the housing the region has, and we've looked at intensifying some of the sites, and I think they're moving ahead on a couple. Because I sat on Health and Social Services as well. I chaired it for 4 years.
Well, that'd be good because we need anything and everything we can put together, right? Like we'll talk about some of the other stuff next time we get together about the encampments and stuff, because that would have been during your time when you were exclusively on.
I can hardly wait.
On the region. we won't talk about some things, I promise you that. Okay. But so At some point, though, you decide that you're not going to keep running for Kitchener Council.
Well, when the province decided to, we could make a decision whether we wanted to increase the size of council or not in 2010, right?
Yeah.
And we were at 6 at that time. My ward used to go from Trustler Road to King Street.
Oh,
that's right.
It's massive.
Yeah, it's massive. Exactly. So this council, and I didn't support it, decided that we would go back to 10 members of council. So.
Oh, you didn't like was that a reduction? That
was an addition of 4 new people, right?
Oh, you thought it was too many?
I thought it was too many. I think the more cooks in the kitchen spoil the meal. You know, I think we were able to because of our smaller size, we were able to get a lot of things done. Like when we did the $110 million, that was 6 of us.
Okay.
I mean, the votes were always 6-1.
Okay.
But we still got stuff done. Right. You know? And,
yeah.
Well, and it's not to stop the stifle debate or anything. It just seemed like, you know, you streamline the process and you can get a lot more done. And
so you would have just preferred change some of the boundaries to add some more people and other ones that weren't as big, like make them more equal in terms of the number of people.
Well, exactly. And I think back then I would have even supported adding 2 more, but 4 more, it's like having, you know, I know what it was like when I first started, how hard it is, all the learning curves, everything you have to learn. And you got 4 people now starting all over again.
Yeah. So we had, I know in North Dumfries, we had 4, what was it? No, actually it was 3. I think we added 1. So there were, there were 4 on council. And what we did was, because AIR was growing so much and Councillor Foxton was the representative for that, right. We created 2 spots in AIR and reduced the countryside from 3 to 2. So we still had the 4, same number, but just rejigged them to make it a little more even for especially the AIR one, because it was growing so fast.
Well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So I could see what's that. So you said, okay, that's too many. I'm going to the region where there's 16.
Well, I think I was, and I think that was one of the reasons why, but the other was I was looking for a change as well.
Yeah. Yeah. A long time in one place with one council. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And now you could, but you were on, okay. So because when did the direct elect in 2000?
2000, yeah.
Okay. So from 91 to 2000, you're on both. Right. And then from 2000 till 2010, you're just on Kitchener.
That's right. And Tom Holloway went, and
Gene Halboom.
Gene Halboom went.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who else it was. I think that might have been it. Carl? I don't know. All the years flow together, man.
Yeah, I know. It starts to flow like that. Listen, Geoff, I think what we'll do is we're gonna end this podcast at this point in time, okay, for you?
Sure.
Because I know there's a whole bunch of other things at the regional level, and we can talk about some of the projects you and I worked on together, like the roundabout, and engineering around the horseshoe.
That thing is still there, you know that?
Yeah, I know. It's still the other day, well, I won't get too into it, but I said to someone, those pylons were from 2010.
We had to figure it out. They didn't. The engineers couldn't do it.
Anyway, so listen, thanks a lot for going for this trip down memory lane, and we'll be back together for another time real soon.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. This is a great idea that you have doing these things. It's very enjoyable.
Thanks. Okay, Geoff, you take care. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Old Grey Mares podcast. If you have any ideas for stories or people you would like us to interview or reach out to, please feel free to contact us. And thank you again.